Claudia Vance smirked at the defense table like she'd already won. "This isn't a high school debate, honey. Sit down before you make things worse for him." The gallery chuckled. The bailiff grinned. Kendra Hayes didn't sit. She placed a small digital recorder on the table, pressed play, and let the room hear the DA's own voice ordering a paralegal to lose the witness statement that proved her brother's innocence. District Attorney Claudia Vance had spent 12 years building a reputation as the most untouchable prosecutor in Fulton County. 17-year-old Kendra Hayes was just a teenager who refused to let her brother go down for a crime he didn't commit. What happened in that courtroom didn't just free one innocent man. It exposed how far a powerful prosecutor would go to win, and it all unraveled in less time than it takes to pour a cup of coffee. To understand what happened in that courtroom, you have to go back 3 months to a gas station on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive in southwest Atlanta. Jamal Hayes was 19 years old, a sophomore at Georgia State studying criminal justice. The night of March 11th, he was at home in his apartment on Pryor Street, eating ramen and studying for a midterm. He had 3 roommates who could prove it. It didn't matter. A convenience store clerk had been robbed at gunpoint 2 blocks from his apartment. The clerk described a black male in a red hoodie. Jamal wore a red hoodie. He fit the height, the build, the general description that fits thousands of young black men in Fulton County. Police picked him up outside his apartment the next morning. They didn't bother checking his alibi. They had a case to close. District Attorney Claudia Vance personally assigned the case to herself. She had a 97% conviction rate over 12 years, and she was 6 months away from a confirmation hearing for a Superior Court judgeship. She didn't lose. She didn't even come close to losing. Her reputation was built on results, and results were built on whatever it took. Defense attorneys had filed 6 separate motions over the years alleging prosecutorial misconduct. All 6 were dismissed. 2 of the defense attorneys who filed them are no longer practicing law. One moved out of state. The other was disbarred for an unrelated reason, but the rumor around the courthouse was that Claudia Vance had a way of making problems disappear. There was a witness, a homeless man named Marcus Cole who had been sleeping in the alley beside the gas station that night. He told the lead detective that the man who ran out the back door was shorter than Jamal, heavier, with a visible neck tattoo. Jamal has no neck tattoo. Marcus Cole gave a written statement, signed and dated, and the detective filed it. Then the statement disappeared. Not lost in the system, removed. Jamal's public defender learned of the statement weeks later from the detective's own notes but couldn't locate the original. Without it, there was no way to challenge the identification. Jamal Hayes was looking at 10 to 15 years. Kendra Hayes had been sitting in the back of every preliminary hearing, taking notes in a green spiral notebook. She had called the DA's office 6 times. She requested the witness list. She was told it was pending. She asked about the exculpatory statement. She was told nothing like that existed. She knew they were lying and she had no way to prove it. Then on a Thursday night, Claudia Vance made the mistake that would end her career. She meant to call her paralegal, a man named Richard Bell. She dialed his number, or what she thought was his number, and when the voicemail picked up, she let loose. She didn't identify herself, but her voice was unmistakable. "Richard, the Hayes file, Marcus Cole's statement, lose it, shred it. We don't need it surfacing before the arraignment. This kid's going down, and I'm not letting some homeless man's scribble derail a conviction." She hung up, not realizing she had dialed 1 digit wrong and that the voicemail she left was on Kendra Hayes' phone. Kendra listened to it 14 times that night, sitting on the edge of her bed, the glow of the streetlight coming through the window. She transferred the recording to her laptop. She saved it to a thumb drive. She put a copy in the cloud. She tucked her phone in her pocket and didn't sleep at all. The next morning, she put on her blue blazer, the one her mother had bought her for 11th grade debate finals. She took the city bus to the Fulton County Courthouse. She sat in the gallery, hands shaking, waiting for her brother's name to be called. She watched Claudia Vance stride in like she owned the building, certain that today would be just another victory. And when the judge asked if anyone else had anything to say before bail was set, Kendra stood up. Her voice was steady. "Your Honor, I have evidence that the district attorney has committed a serious ethical violation." Vance turned with that smirk, the one that had dismissed 100 defense motions before, and said what she said. Then Kendra, without another word, placed the recorder on the table. The court stenographer's fingers stopped moving. The bailiff's hand went to his belt. Claudia Vance's smile flickered once, then froze. And then there was silence in courtroom 4, the kind of silence that comes just before a woman who thought she was invincible learns that a 17-year-old child has just pulled the pin. The recording played. There was no static, no distortion. Claudia Vance's voice filled the courtroom like smoke from a fire nobody had seen yet. "Richard, the Hayes file. Marcus Cole's statement. Lose it, shred it. We don't need it surfacing before the arraignment. This kid's going down, and I'm not letting some homeless man's scribble derail a conviction." The last word hung in the air for one breath, then two. Judge Harold Simmons removed his glasses. He set them on the bench with the careful precision of a man who has just realized he has been presiding over a crime. He looked at the prosecutor's table and his voice came out cold and quiet. "Ms. Vance, you will remain seated. You will not speak." Vance didn't move. Her face had gone the color of drywall. The bailiff, a man who had served in that courtroom for 16 years, later told a reporter it was the first time he had ever seen a sitting district attorney look like she might vomit in open court. Kendra Hayes did not lower the recorder until the message ended. Then she looked at the judge. "I received this call at 9:47 p.m. on March 14th. The caller ID showed the Fulton County District Attorney's Office main line. I have the original recording, a digital backup, and a third copy with a timestamp verification service. I am prepared to make all three available to the court and to the Georgia State Bar." She spoke without a stutter, without a waver, the way someone speaks when they have rehearsed every word in a bedroom mirror while their brother sat in a cell 6 miles away. Judge Simmons recessed the proceedings for 1 hour. He ordered the courtroom sealed, the recording secured, and the clerk to contact the state bar's disciplinary board before the hour was up. Jamal Hayes watched his sister from the defendant's table with tears running into the collar of his orange jumpsuit. He had been in lockup for 31 days. He had lost 15 pounds. He had missed his midterms. He had spent every visitation telling Kendra to let it go, that he would take the plea, that she needed to stay safe and stay out of it. She had ignored all of it. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the recording had been authenticated by the court's audio technician. The phone number was confirmed. The voice print matched Claudia Vance's known public statements with 99.8% certainty. Judge Simmons dismissed all charges against Jamal Hayes with prejudice, meaning they could never be refiled. Jamal walked out of the courthouse into the March sunlight at 4:12 p.m., and the first person he grabbed was his sister. The photograph of that moment, Kendra with her face buried in his shoulder, the blue blazer crumpled between them, ran on the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the next morning. But Claudia Vance was not done. She wasn't going to go quietly. She had 12 years of political alliances, a network of former prosecutors who now sat on the state bar's disciplinary board, and a personal attorney who had been preparing damage control since the moment she walked out of that courtroom. The first counterattack came within 48 hours. Vance's legal team filed an emergency motion arguing that the voicemail had been obtained illegally under Georgia's wiretapping statute, which required two-party consent for recording phone calls. They claimed Kendra had intercepted a communication not intended for her, that she had violated Vance's reasonable expectation of privacy, and that the recording should be suppressed and destroyed. The motion landed on Judge Simmons's desk at 8 in the morning. It was 31 pages long, meticulously footnoted with case law dating back to 1986, and it carried the signature of one of the most expensive criminal defense firms in the Southeast. Kendra read the filing in the student lounge at South Atlanta High School. She was supposed to be in AP government. She didn't go. She sat at a plastic table with a cold cup of tea and went through every page, her green spiral notebook open beside her. Then she closed the notebook and called a number she had been holding onto for 3 days, a lawyer from the Southern Center for Human Rights named Elijah Bishop. He had reached out after the hearing, left his card with the front office, and told the secretary he would represent Kendra Hayes free of charge if she ever needed it. She called him at 10:15. He was at the school by 11. Meanwhile, the public had started to pay attention. A local reporter named Sabrina Triwong from WSB-TV had gotten hold of the probable cause hearing transcript, and she ran a segment that Friday night detailing not just the recording, but the missing witness statement, the 6 prior misconduct motions against Vance, and the revelation that Marcus Cole had been relocated to an out-of-state shelter by unknown persons 3 days after giving his statement to police. He had not been seen since. Someone, the segment didn't say who, but the implication was heavy, had made sure the one eyewitness who could exonerate Jamal Hayes disappeared before the arraignment. The hashtag Justice for Jamal trended through the weekend. Protesters gathered outside the Fulton County Courthouse on Saturday morning, 400 people with signs and phones, and a chant that the local news described as orderly but unignorable. Kendra stood at the front with a microphone she didn't ask for, and she said 4 sentences. "My brother is free. He should never have been locked up in the first place. There are people still inside who are innocent. We are not stopping." The crowd sent up a noise that echoed off the courthouse walls. Then the second wave hit. A paralegal from Vance's office, not Richard Bell, but a woman named Denise Morton, who had worked under Vance for 8 years, called Elijah Bishop's office at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. She was crying. She said she had been sitting on something for 2 years and hadn't known how to come forward. She said there was an entire filing cabinet on the 4th floor of the DA's office, locked, marked pending review, that contained evidence from cases where Vance had secured convictions under questionable circumstances. She said she had seen memos ordering the destruction of witness statements in 3 other cases. She said she would testify under oath if she had protection from retaliation. Elijah Bishop drove to her apartment that night. 3 hours later, he had a sworn affidavit detailing a pattern of evidence suppression that stretched back to 2017, 7 cases, 7 convictions, 7 people currently serving time who might have been wrongfully convicted due to Claudia Vance's misconduct. The youngest was 21. The oldest was 62. One of them had already served 4 years of an 18-year sentence for an armed robbery that Denise Morton now believed he did not commit. The affidavit dropped on Wednesday morning, filed with the state bar, and leaked to the press by a source inside the disciplinary board, who identified themselves only as a lawyer who still believes in the rule of law. By noon, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation had opened a preliminary inquiry. By 3, Claudia Vance's attorney issued a statement calling Denise Morton a disgruntled former employee engaged in a vendetta. By 6, 3 more former staffers had confirmed, anonymously, that Morton's account was consistent with their own experiences. The pressure was mounting, but the system that had protected Vance for 12 years was still intact. The State Bar Disciplinary Committee scheduled a hearing for the following month, a closed-door proceeding that would determine whether Vance would face formal charges, suspension, or disbarment. The committee's chair was a former district attorney named Walter Cross, who had served alongside Vance on the State Prosecutor's Council for 6 years. He recused himself after public outcry, but his temporary replacement was a retired judge who had once written a letter of recommendation for Vance's judicial appointment. The process was supposed to be impartial. Everyone watching knew it wouldn't be. Kendra Hayes, now with her brother home and a legal team behind her, faced a choice. She could trust the slow machinery of the bar to do its job, to investigate, to deliver consequences months from now after the public had moved on to something else. Or she could take the recording, the affidavit, and everything they had and release it directly to the public. Elijah Bishop advised caution. "The bar will argue you're trying the case in the media," he said. "They'll use it against the complaint." Kendra listened. She looked at her brother, who was sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal the way people eat when they have forgotten what food tastes like outside of a cell. Then she looked at her notebook, the green spiral one where she had written down the names of the 7 people Denise Morton believed were wrongfully convicted. She closed the notebook. She made the second phone call that would change everything to Sabrina Triuong at WSB-TV. "I'm ready to talk," she said. "On camera. Tomorrow." The interview aired on a Thursday night at 6 o'clock. Sabrina Triuong sat across from Kendra in a small studio with bare walls and 2 chairs and a single camera that made the room feel like a confessional. Kendra didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She spoke directly to the lens and said, "My brother is home because I had a recording. There are 7 people in Georgia prisons right now who didn't have a recording, who didn't have anyone believe them. I'm asking the state bar to do what it hasn't done for 12 years, hold Claudia Vance accountable." She held up her green notebook and read the 7 names aloud, one by one, each one followed by a brief description of the evidence that had been suppressed. The camera stayed on her face the entire time. The segment lasted 8 minutes. By 9 o'clock, it had been shared 14,000 times. By midnight, the state bar's phone lines were overwhelmed. The disciplinary hearing that had been scheduled for weeks suddenly became public. The Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court, a woman named Alina Pearson who had watched the interview from her home study, issued a statement at 10 o'clock that night. "The integrity of our legal system depends on public trust. Effective immediately, I am appointing a special master to oversee the investigation into the conduct of former District Attorney Claudia Vance, with full authority to review all relevant case files and issue binding recommendations." The special master was a retired federal judge named Marcus Webb, a man known for 2 things: an unshakable commitment to due process and an absolute intolerance for prosecutorial misconduct. He had been out of the game for 4 years. He came back for this. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, the locked filing cabinet on the 4th floor was opened by court order. Inside were not just 3 cases, not just 7, but 23 files containing exculpatory evidence that had never been disclosed to defense counsel. Witness statements, security footage logs, DNA exclusion reports, all of it marked pending review, which in practice meant permanently buried. The oldest file dated back to 2010, 2 years into Vance's tenure. A 20-year-old man named Terrence Mills had been convicted of armed robbery based on a single eyewitness identification. The file contained a surveillance video from a nearby ATM that showed Mills 3 miles away at the exact time of the robbery. That video had been in Vance's possession and was never turned over. Mills had served 9 years of a 20-year sentence before being released on parole. He learned he had been exonerated while sitting in his mother's living room, watching the news. His mother said he didn't speak for 10 minutes. Then he just said, "I knew it." 2 days before the special master's final hearing, the second break came. Richard Bell, the paralegal who had been on the receiving end of the voicemail, walked into the GBI field office in Decatur and asked to speak with an agent. He was pale, unshaven, and carrying a cardboard box. He had been ordered by Vance, he said, to destroy not only Marcus Cole's statement but records from 4 other cases in the preceding 18 months. He had been too afraid to refuse, but he had also been too afraid to destroy everything without keeping proof. The box contained photocopies he had made in secret, memos with Vance's initials, sticky notes in her handwriting, a list of case numbers with the word "disappeared" scrawled at the top. He set it on the agent's desk and said, "I know I'm going to lose my license. I just couldn't carry it anymore." At the final hearing, Special Master Marcus Webb read the findings into the record for 90 minutes. He detailed 23 confirmed instances of evidence suppression. He cited 18 violations of the Georgia Rules of Professional Conduct. He described a pattern of behavior that was not incidental, not the result of oversight, but deliberate, systematic, and sustained over more than a decade, directed at ensuring convictions at the expense of justice. He recommended permanent disbarment and referral for criminal investigation. Claudia Vance was not present. She had submitted a letter through her attorney stating that she disagreed with the findings but would accept the outcome. She was at home in Buckhead, behind a gated entrance, and she did not answer the door when a reporter knocked. The Georgia Supreme Court accepted the recommendation unanimously. Claudia Vance was disbarred on a Tuesday morning in late September, 12 years and 7 months after she first took office. The criminal investigation led to charges of tampering with evidence and violation of oath by a public officer. She pleaded no contest 6 months later and received 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a fine of $50,000. She did not serve a day in jail. Many people believed that wasn't enough. Kendra Hayes was not one of them. When a journalist asked her reaction, she said, "I didn't do this because I wanted her in a cell. I did it because every person she put in a cell deserved a fair trial. They didn't get one. The system has to fix that now, not just punish her." Within a year, the Georgia legislature passed the Exculpatory Evidence Accountability Act, which mandated an automatic review of all past cases in which a prosecutor had been found to have suppressed evidence. 7 of the 23 individuals identified in the special master's report had their convictions vacated. 3 others had already been executed. That number, 3, is something Kendra still can't talk about without pausing. She mentions their names quietly once, and then she moves forward. Kendra Hayes graduated from high school that spring. She was offered a full scholarship to Howard University. She is studying pre-law now, and she told a reporter from the Washington Post that she plans to become a public defender. She still carries the green notebook. She still has the recording saved on her phone. Jamal Hayes finished his degree at Georgia State and works at a nonprofit that helps exonerees rebuild their lives. Marcus Cole, the homeless man whose statement was destroyed, was located by a private investigator hired by the Southern Center for Human Rights. He is living in a transitional housing program in Macon. He testified at Claudia Vance's disciplinary hearing via video link. When asked why he came forward, he said, "Because somebody finally asked." The final detail, the one that still sends a chill through anyone who worked on this case, came out months after everything was over. The voicemail that started it all, the one Claudia Vance left by mistake, was not actually left on Kendra's phone. Kendra had been calling the DA's office so many times that her number showed up as a recent call on Vance's phone. When Vance meant to dial Richard Bell's extension, she scrolled through her recent calls, tapped the number just below Richard's, and didn't notice the digits were different. One line off. That's all. One line off, and a 17-year-old girl who refused to back down brought down the most powerful prosecutor in the county. Kendra still thinks about that sometimes. How close it came to never happening. How many other cases never got their chance. And she keeps the recording saved in 3 different places because she knows that justice doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives when someone decides to stand up, even when the room is laughing, even when the system says sit down. Especially then. There is a Kendra Hayes in every courtroom, every school, every neighborhood where the powerful have decided that someone is small enough to push around. Most of the time, the system gets away with it. The evidence stays buried, the voicemail dials the right number, and an innocent person does time because a prosecutor wanted a win more than she wanted the truth. Kendra Hayes is not the rule. She is the exception, and she is the proof that the exception is possible. It took a 17-year-old with a green notebook, a borrowed blazer, and a voicemail she wasn't supposed to receive. It took a brother who refused to let his sister carry the weight alone. It took a paralegal who finally couldn't sleep at night, a journalist who stayed on the story, and a special master who read every page of the filing cabinet. It took all of that just to do what the system was supposed to do on its own. So the question is not whether Claudia Vance got what she deserved. The question is how many more filing cabinets are still locked, how many more recording devices never got pressed, how many more people are waiting for someone to believe them. Somewhere tonight, there is a kid at a school board meeting, a parent at a city council hearing, an employee in a closed-door meeting who has the evidence and is terrified to stand up. They are watching this. They know what they're holding, and they are deciding right now whether they are going to sit down or press play. Drop your city in the comments and the time you're watching. I read every single one. If this story reminded you that one person can still bring the whole machine to a halt, Send it to someone who needs that reminder tonight. And if you're not subscribed yet, stay close. There is another story coming next week about someone who refused to be silent, and you will not want to miss it. Until then, may the truth always find the right phone.